Good morning, everybody. It's Tom Soane here, and thanks and welcome along. And today I've got a really good one for you. I'm just sat in the car over the road from the office. Bit of a miserable morning, so I thought, hey, I'll jump on a live and share a couple of little insights with you, with everybody. So look, today I really wanted to share 3 completely different ways that you can really profit and benefit and maximize from local letting agents. And as I said in the title there, I'm really surprised that a lot more property investors and landlords don't use letting agents in different ways than just tenant finding and managing properties. And that's the key here. Letting agents, yes, technically that's what they do. They manage properties, they find tenants, and they do that sort of job. But there's at least 3. There's so many more, but there's too many for a live. But there's at least 3 really awesome ways that you, as landlords and property investors, can also profit from letting agents. So I wanted to share those with you here, and I'm going to go through things like contractors. Contractors are really important. Advice and experience and resources that letting agents have that you don't as landlords and property investors. But also the big one, the compliance and the legal side, how you can utilize letting agents without actually being a customer. And that's the key, right? Because there are so many landlords, DIY landlords and self-managing landlords, that don't use letting agents because they don't want to be a customer of a letting agent. Maybe you don't trust letting agents, maybe you don't want to pay for letting agents, but these are 3 ways that you can use letting agents without being customers. So let's get into it, shall we? Now, first of all, this is mainly driven towards property investors and DIY self-managing landlords. So if you are not one of those things, or you know somebody who is, then keep listening because this will help. But look, I'm so surprised people don't use these resources that letting agents provide. And I'm really talking about the local letting agents here, and I'll tell you why. Letting agents, now you're going to hate me for saying this, but letting agents are the unsung heroes and the underappreciated heroes of the property industry. Now don't hate me for saying that, because it's true. They do so much for so little money, but they also keep landlords out of trouble. They keep them profitable. They do all those things. There are a few not so good letting agents around the country who perhaps don't put so much effort in, but certainly there are the majority, 99% of letting agents are good, methodical, task-driven, effective people. So anyway, this will help all of you. But also agents, if there are any agents that ever get to watch this, then you should be offering this to customers or people that are not your customers as well. For sure, definitely. I think you're both missing a trick. But you know, also agents, you could win business from this, and landlords, you could also benefit and profit from this too. So let's start off with contractors. Now contractors, as you all probably know, if you're a landlord and an agent, by the way, contractors are like your currency. They're like your lifeblood, really. So landlords, for some reason, are quite comfortable just going over to Check a Trade or Google searching for a contractor, but they won't go to a local letting agent, which is quite funny, really, because really, if you think about a letting agent's business, they have to provide high quality, reliable services, quickly reactive and proactive to a landlord. They have to do that. That's their whole business. So they must have contractors that are reliable and trustworthy and honest. They have to know their contractors. Their contractors have to be price competitive and competent as well. But also they have to have a network of pre-vetted, qualified, accredited and experienced contractors. Otherwise, they're going to let their customers down. And we're not just talking about one customer. Letting agents normally work with a few hundred properties here. So they have to have that network of seriously good contractors because it's their business, it's their livelihoods. But also, landlords will quite happily instruct or contract a contractor without having all of those things in place, without having the relevant accreditations and checks and qualifications in place. Insurances as well, that's another big one. And look, DIY landlords, when was the last time you did a full analysis and check on a contractor that you've used? Even if it's your mate Do you know categorically that they have the right accreditations? Like electricians, I did that interview yesterday with Luke from LE Electrical, who told me that actually there are different qualifications for different types of work in the electrical industry. Didn't know that. So yeah, think about that. It's their business, it's what they do, and they have deeply embedded relationships with contractors. But also contractors prioritize agents. Well, think about it. If you were a business owner and you get loads of business from this one place, then of course you're going to prioritize them to a certain degree. So contractors do the same. And that's why letting agents are able to get jobs done so much faster than the general person or the general landlord. But remember, if you're going to use a letting agent's contractor, don't worry about paying the letting agent's small markup, right? Because normally letting agents will charge maybe like 10 quid or something like that for the contractor's work. So if that's the case, don't begrudge them that little tiny bit of money if they're going to help you out, purely because, I don't know if you've ever gone through that process of instructing a contractor and doing all that work. If you have, then it is a bit of work. You might as well get someone else to do it. But that letting agent has invested lots of money in building that relationship with the contractor. So don't begrudge them a 10 quid here or 15 quid there for doing that for you and helping you out. You will benefit from that in the long term because that contractor will be reliable. But also, the chances are that contractor has a special rate in place with the contractor too, with the agent too. So you can guarantee that, yeah, you might be spending an extra tenner, but it's going to be overall a cheaper price. We're going to go on to the advice and experience and the resources that you can get from a letting agent without actually being a customer. Mind blowing. But look, so speak to a letting agent and just ask the question. Would you allow me to work with one of your contractors? I need a contractor, I need a plumber. Do you know a reliable plumber? I'm happy to pay your markup. I guarantee you a good letting agent will help you out because it's in their nature to help out. Letting agents are by default helpers and enablers and assisters and so on. It's their service, isn't it? They don't want to say no because they think they might be able to win a customer, and maybe they will in the future. And maybe, look, here's another thing. Now, my company, Pink Street, I offer a bespoke maintenance only service, or that sort of service where it's a bespoke pay-as-you-go type service. Now, I'm only based in Portsmouth and surrounding areas, so I can't help everybody that will watch this, but maybe a little hint to other letting agents: add in a pay-as-you-go service where you literally have a menu of fees, allow people to choose what services they want at any time, knowing what the fees are. It's a little pay-as-you-go service. Anyway, moving on. Now we're going to talk about what resources, what advice, what experience you can use from local letting agents without actually being a customer. Awesome, right? So first of all, there's the obvious one. Rent valuations. Now, I don't mean just once. If you're buying a rental property and you want a rent valuation from a letting agent, then great. That's an easy way to get that information. However, if you are a DIY landlord and you own a rental property, then surely your letting agent can give you an updated rent value continuously every year to let you know what you can increase the rent by. Now, again, don't be afraid to give that letting agent a little bit of compensation for the time that they've invested in that, purely because it's their time and they will do a good job. But there's so much more that you will get from that rent valuation. Trust me on this one. A letting agent is amazing. Amazing. And I'm so stunned that people don't use them for all this stuff. I'll just go through this here. I've got quite a bit, by the way, quite a lot of stuff. So I'll go for it. Anyway, first of all, if you're going to get that rent valuation from a letting agent, you can also get some advice on where to invest. If you're about to buy a rental property, you can ask that letting agent about tenant demographics, i.e. what types of tenant rent from you? What types of tenant live in this area? What types of problems do you find in that area? And it's really easy for a letting agent to just know this stuff off the top of their head because they deal with it every day. What types of areas should you not invest in? What demand is there for that area? A letting agent will be able to tell you how much demand there is for a certain area. But also, how long do tenants stay in those properties in those areas? What sort of timescales? How long does it take to rent out? Really interesting information if you're thinking of buying a property to let, or you're thinking about doing something with your existing property. But then there's refurbishing and improving a property. If you're going to go and refurbish an entire property, get a letting agent out to see it with you. They'll tell you what refurbishments you should and should not do in order to get the highest rent price, because it's not what you think. You know, you're thinking, right, I'll just go in and I'll do white walls and grey carpets, and I'll do a nice dark grey kitchen, or a nice white kitchen and a nice white bathroom. Now, your letting agent might come in and say, well, yeah, you could spend 20 grand on all of that, but I don't think you need this. I don't think you need to do that. And don't do grey carpets, do this colour carpet. Don't do white walls, do this colour, because that will get you more rent. Or it will save you 10 grand and you might only get 25 quid less rent. So think about it from that perspective. Your letting agent, your local letting agent will be able to help you with the refurb. I'm trying to fly through this here because it's 8:05, and you know, I'm conscious that everyone's trying to get to work, right? So anyway, next thing is quite simple actually. The letting agent will be able to tell you from a rental perspective, is this a good investment or not? Are there loads of problems in this area with flooding and leaks, and is that building type constantly having maintenance done on it, and so on. Really good advice. Then there's tenant issues. What are the main tenant issues with those types of properties in those types of areas with those types of tenants? And then lastly, contacts. Your letting agent will have a phenomenon, if that's a terrible word for that situation, for that sentence. Your letting agent will have a whole host of contacts that you can utilize. And I'm not just talking about contractors that I mentioned earlier. So you're having a whole host of contacts at your fingertips. You can have mortgage advice, insurance advice. You can have contractors I've mentioned earlier on. Letting agents. No, if your letting agent is in one area but your property is in another, like me, then you can speak to that letting agent, because the chances are they're going to be connected in some way with other areas of the country. So for me, for an example, I've got about 3,500 letting agents around the country that I'm connected with, and I'm part of a private invite-only group to that letting agency group. So speak to your local letting agent and say, hey, speak to me. Just say, hey, Tom, I've got a property in Leeds. Do you know any good letting agents in Leeds? And I definitely do. I know great letting agents in Newcastle, Manchester, Swansea, everywhere. So ask your local letting agent or ask me. And I want to go into another part here, which is about compliance and legal. And I've left this till the end because it's the most boring topic, but it's also the most important and the highest risk for landlords. So I've brought this one here to tell you how you can use your local letting agent for legal and compliance and documents and matters like that without actually being a customer. I know. And letting agents are hating me for doing this, and I bet. But actually, letting agents, think about it. If you support landlords that aren't your customers, you might win their custom in the future. Hey, something crazy for you there. But look, first of all, letting agents are normally the first people to know of any changes to legislation in the lettings industry and in the property industry. Now, if you're a letting agent and you're not the first to know this stuff, then I would ask what the hell you're doing. But actually, yeah, letting agents are normally so deeply networked and embedded in the whole legislation and legal side of property. And remember, this part is massive right now. Landlords, you are being targeted by the government for a whole range of legislation, compliance processes and laws that are out to get you if you're not doing everything right. Did you know there's 178 different pieces of legislation that landlords have to know and follow? Madness. Anyway, but yeah, letting agents for changes to legislation, definitely. Documents. Your letting agent has got the documents that you need, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, to install or implement a compliant tenancy. You need those documents from the letting agents. ASTs, right to rent checks, how to rent guides. Anyway, all of those documents that you need. And I've done a whole piece on everything you need for every tenancy every time. So have a listen to that. But use the letting agents for that same thing. But don't be afraid of giving them a little bit of money for that service. they're doing you a favour, keeping you out of jail. Anyway, yeah, legal procedures as well. Now, if you've got a situation where you think it might be a legal matter, or there might be some legal implications, talk to your letting agent, tell them the situation and let them help you through the process. Like the eviction process, for an example. There is a set process to follow to evict a tenant. And if you do it wrong, you'll either end up going through that process for a year or just dragging it out because you haven't followed the right procedures, or you could speak to a letting agent and get it done quickly and properly. Disputes. Now, there are things like deposit disputes that I hear DIY landlords get wrong all the time and end up costing themselves money because they're not doing it correctly. So ask your letting agent. Wear and tear. Wear and tear is a huge one. If you don't calculate the actual wear and tear properly, and it's a calculation, believe it or not, if you go in front of a judge and you're trying to dispute deposits because of wear and tear on a carpet or wear and tear on things, and you sit in front of a judge and you haven't calculated it correctly, the judge will just throw it out and won't even entertain you. So anyway, disputes, that's a big one. And lastly, I just wanted to say that agents spend fortunes on this education, all of that, and not just education, and these contacts, these things, everything I've just been through right there. Agents spend fortunes on learning this stuff, on being at the forefront of it and knowing it before anybody else does and before anyone can get it wrong, because then they can implement it for their hundreds of landlords. My company, for example, we're constantly on training courses and on all types of education to make sure, and look, by the way, I'm not selling my company here, I'm only in Portsmouth and my following seems to be national, but we spend fortunes on education and all of this stuff so we know it before anybody else, so we can implement it and protect our landlords. And any good agent worth their salt, which is a weird phrase, is the same. My last little bits of advice here. So I've been through how to use agencies, contractors. I've been through how to use the advice, experience and the resources. Documents, that's a huge one in there. Use those resources. I've been through how to get it right legally and compliantly and to follow the right processes to get things done properly. So how do you do all of that? Well, very quickly, build a relationship with a local letting agent. And why am I saying local letting agent? It's opinion, I guess, but I think the local letting agent is better than the corporate letting agent. And I'm sorry for saying that if anybody here or ever watches this is a corporate letting agent, but I think the locals are better. So build a relationship with the local letting agent. I feel like they're more inclined to help, more inclined to want to help to reach a good positive resolve, and more inclined to be a go-getter. I find that corporate agents, and sorry, this is just my opinion, and I make no apology. Well, I do apologise, but I also don't. Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, corporate letting agents, in my opinion, are A, less inclined to help, B, less inclined to be proactive in that help, and C, you're probably not going to be able to take services from them that aren't already set in stone. So I think build relationships with local letting agents. And I believe in local anyway. I think that local is always better if you build a better relationship locally. Pay for their support. If they're going to charge you a tenner for some documentation, pay it. It's a tenner and it keeps your lettings and your property, I guess the compliance and the legalities of your property compliant. Definitely pay for the services. And lastly, I just want to finish by saying to both agents and to landlords, agents, if you supply this stuff and you help landlords like this, work it out into how much time it's going to take you to provide this little bit of service and charge accordingly. You may well build yourself a relationship with a customer for the future. And landlords, pay this little bit of money to get it right without having to invest tons of your own time researching how to do it right and maybe getting it right, maybe getting it wrong, because it could also be a test for the future to see if this is the right agent to manage your properties when you get to that point when you don't want to anymore. How awesome would it be to get to that point where you've hit your your peak, so to speak, and you think, I don't want to manage my own properties anymore, so I need a good letting agent, and you already know Tom from Pink Street, or you already know Sharon from ABC Lettings, and you've built a good relationship, you trust them, you know their contractors, and you know their processes, there's your letting agent right there. So those are 3 ways, actually probably more than 3 ways, but those are 3 ways for you to be able to use, profit from, I know, and benefit from a local letting agent. And I hope that helped. If it did help, then please stick a comment below. It really helps me do these things more, and I'm giving all this information away for free. I don't get paid for this. So it helps me just make sure I'm doing the right thing in the right way and helping people. So stick a comment below, tag some people that might benefit from that information. Tag a local letting agent. If you know a local letting agent, tag them. Because I think more people should provide these services. Anyway, that's it. And this is just one thing. This is just one thing in the grand scheme of things. And you remember what I always say, in order to be the best version of yourself at one thing, you've got to be the best version of yourself at everything, right? And you can do it. You are entitled to make profit, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord. So let's bloody do it together. My name's Tom Soane, and this, as always, is the Anonymous